You're all set? Okay. I want to start out basically by recalling how I got here. I'm a stranger that came to this area by accident rather than by design. And I grew up in southern Ohio, 7 years in Cincinnati area. And it was okay. And there are things that I'm not a city person, in cities and stuff like that bothered me. So 1956, fall of 56, I was discharged from the Marine Corps, and you could get a job then, sort of, but 57 came along, you couldn't Big Barber steal the job. I was going back, and even in 56, I drew a thing they called GI unemployment, $26.50 a week. The funny part was, I was at E4, but I got out, and I was cleared $55 every 2 weeks, and I'm getting $53 every 2 weeks. What about great life, anyway. So come into the early parts of the 50s, no jobs anywhere. But I had an uncle that lived up here in Hemlock, my dad's younger brother. His wife was originally from New York State, and they came up here in around 1951. And they eventually bought a house in Hemlock. So I thought, well, nothing's doing. I decided I'm going to go visit Uncle and see what's going on up here, just something different. So I get up here, doing around for a while. And they used to frequent a place in Lima called Jean's. It was just to the west of the village there, in a restaurant bar. And they knew the people that ran it. They were a couple from England. And I was a bartender there. Was an interesting guy. A lot of you might know him. Was an ex-ball player named Ken O'Day. And he was from Lima originally, so he was there working and talking to different people and stuff. But they're good friends of mine also. But anyway, so I'm hanging around there a bit and meeting people from Lima. Eventually, we get it towards summer, and one day this young woman showed up, and actually two at the same time. But I came to treat with her and talk with her once in a while. So she was Shirley Mamoon, and the other one was Helen Lefevre. But so Shirley was the one I could talk with once in a while. And so one night, Ken stuck his head around the corner and said, "Why don't you give the guy a break and go out with him?" And so she did. We did. And a year and a half later, we got married. And so then after that, going along, and I was working for Sears at that time, from the city in the warehouse. We handled plumbing and heating supplies that came from the manufacturer, and we distributed to the whole Northeast. And so then they had a change of wheels at Sears, and they decided we were not a money-making part of the company. So they're going to close us down. And I'm trying to figure out what to do. So I was talking to my father-in-law one night about it. I said, they got to find something that's not connected to them, whatever, to get a job. And he says, "Did you ever think about cutting hip for a And I said, "No, but I'll try anything once." So he said, "Well, you go to school, get the background, you come work with me because I'm at a point where I want to slow down." So I said, "Okay." So I wait, stayed with Sears until they finally shut us down. Took my money from there, stocked it, sold it, went to school, went to barber school in Syracuse. And then later on, I came and started with my father-in-law. Now, the interesting thing was, I was not an employee, and we worked together. We both just worked in the shop. I had my own and everything. So we went along, and everything was fine. It's one of those things I don't think if somebody would said about a career to go into, I don't think Barber would have ever been on the list. So I got into a fight by accident and stayed with him. And as you know, the rest is history. So I stayed, and I finally retired after 60 years. But I couldn't find a way to quit. When you work with people, it's very hard to quit, to leave, because these are customers I've had for years, generations, and it's basically like family. People are getting dry, but there's a way that when you're doing this with your families and stuff, over time, it's not, it was work effect when I first started with them. I couldn't believe how hard it was because standing all those hours working. The first couple of weeks I'd go home after work, my legs felt like they were made out of wood, like sticks. So you had all new muscles in your body, you had to get used to the different positions and working and standing for long hours. But anyway, everything worked out fine and we got along. So that's how I got into the barbering. It worked out to be great because in doing that, I met a lot of people over time, especially a lot of the old timers that were still around, that were old timers here from back then. So they had stories to tell about. Oh, thank you. They had stories to tell about what things were like back in the early days. You know, and someone they told me when the hotel was a hotel, where the eyeglass place is now. That was when I came here. That was the State Bank of Honeoye Falls, the Masonic Temple is. So they'd go in there and they'd say, you go ahead and you get a super beer, it costs you a nickel. You had a sideboard of cold cuts and cheese, whatever, to help yourself make a sandwich. And I said, boy, those days are gone. You get have your lunch and for a nickel for beer. But anyway, other things were some of the guys, I had a couple who actually were drovers. You know what a drover is? They're a person who walks animals to market. They don't think of it as a truck or anything. I don't care if it's cattle, sheep, whatever. They in a group, they walk to market. So they're like a cowboy without a horse. but like I said, it was interesting over the time to run into these old people talking about these, to see what was actually going on. And but I decided I went to do it in a series of things tonight, and then get through those, and then open up and instead of the conversation thing and have a discussion with people. The next thing I want to talk about is I want to take you on a walk through the village at that time. And I'll start at North Street. When I came here, that was Railroad Avenue. If you went up North Street, the first place was built Stuart Cage's lumber. Then it was Deck and Oil behind that. And then you went farther up, and then it was the little Desmart's old lumber yard. Across the street from them was Kingston Farm Street. And at the far end of the street was the Little Seed Company. We'll come back now to Main Street, and now we're starting out Main Street. And the first place was Northside Furniture. Then you went from there, there was the post office. And then there was a little lane that goes back to the church. And then the next building, where the pizza place is now, that was an insurance office for years. And, then next to him was the hardware store. Then it was Cardinals. Wait a minute, I skipped one. The hardware store was Reeves Grocery Store. Actually, when I came to town, there were 5 grocery stores here. So Reeves was one. Then you cross, now we go where the Chinese restaurant is. That was a 5 and dime store. And then you go up past them, there was another little place that sold notion stuff, cloth and sewing things. And then there was Sam's Bar. That was one of the few places in town. There's like 2 or 3 of them. Anyway, next to Sam's Bar, that's where the bookstore is now. That was Hart's Market, and that was the whole grocery store. On the corner of that, there's a Pettis shoe store. And then you cross the street to Weblake's Pharmacy. And then there was Harlan Moffitt's grocery store, and there was a liquor store. Then there was this building, I don't know what it was at the end. Later it became a bar. Everybody knew it as the Rat Trap. I don't remember what the original name was.
Walk in.
But then beyond that was the Western Auto Store. And there was a little alleyway that went up along the Western Auto Store. It goes back in there. Back in there was a garage. There was an Oldsmobile agency. And actually, where the Oldsmobile agency is where the diner became to be. They used that building later on to put for the diner. Anyway, but beyond the Western Auto, there was this hotel there, cottage hotel. It covered the whole front of that parking lot. And they had so when they tore that down, it was really too bad. It had 2 stories and had a big porch to sit outside. But there were businesses in there too. Because my wife and I, we bought flowers from foods, and I got foods for our wedding. And so then you left there. Then you got to Lion Fast down on the corner where the little coffee shop is now. And that coffee shop actually was an office for Lion Fast and not any. That whole block where mall is right there. That was all covered by one building at that time. And then you go past there, and then there was the creamery, and Dutch Hollow Creamery. It's got all kinds of different shops in it now. That was the last one last night. Then we go back up to the other side of Main Street. We have to go way out to where the Shaw Lewis farming place was. And that's where Flaherty's is now. And we come down that, and then there is the mill. And the mill had a big extension out where the parking lot is. And the railroad trains used to come in, the cars would come in, we'd cross the street, go back in between the building and the street. And we would have sort of times that the street was blocked, the railroad cars would move. So then from there, next to the mill, there was a small frame building. But it had 2 businesses. One guy was a barber there and a lawyer in that little building. And the lawyer, I can't remember, John would probably remember, he was the guy who used to laugh because we used to kid him about, he had a hairpiece, but sometimes he wore it sideways. He was very careless about it. Anyway, then you come down through there, and then the next thing was the family diner, which was just a long, narrow building right along the people. You see that blank area where it's just fence sticking up on Main Street. And that's where the diner stood. And then they built the building next to it, where it is now. And then you got to the building where there was a hairdresser, and then there was a bar there. The next bar, there again on the corner. That was a doozy. This guy was. I remember I was there when they carried him out on stretcher. That's thing. But that could have set the whole beer industry, liquor industry in Montreal County on its ear, because they did business with him over years, doing business, but nobody paid attention. And turned to find out he didn't have a liquor license. So he'd been dealing with it for years. And what he had doctored it up a little bit so it didn't look too bad. But now they couldn't, they were at a point where the county, they couldn't shut down all the people that dealt with them because you had nothing left in Montreal County. So it had to figure a way to kind of patch it up a little bit and hide it. So they did. Then you cross the street and there was the bank. And then the bank, and there was somebody in there, I don't know if it was an attorney or who on the other part. But the kicker is, just past the end of that building, there's a little alleyway. And you look in there, and there's a little stub of a building that sticks out. That was the town office. Jeanette Kimball was in there for a zillion years. In this little hole. Now, the shop I was in for years was 12 by 15 feet. I don't think that was much bigger than that. That was the town office where she did all the work. I'm kidding today about, you got to be kidding, you got this whole building down here with all this stuff. So anyway, you go past there, you cross the little alleyway, and then there was the laundry there. So all of a sudden I had a moment, I know the guy's name, but anyway, the laundry. Anyway, I forgot. Then there was Harnish's grocery store, and there was another. I don't think there was another. Something else I can't think. Then at the end of there, you had hardware stores. So here we had 5 grocery stores, 2 hardware stores, and I mean, I think they're good-sized hardware stores. Then you crossed the street went past the park, went down. There was a stone building that was too bad in shape. They were there. That was Fred Wolfsburger's building, and They were making awnings and stuff there at the time. We went up the hill. There's more. I'm trying to think. There's somebody else. I don't know if Jobs was up there on at that time or not. Anyway, I was tracking time there. But but it's funny, over time you get, I can see these places and see the people that were in it. Oh, Alex Snoddy, that was the driver. All of a sudden, it takes a while. Get smoked sometimes, you know. But anyway, especially because the name you know for a long time, it disappears when you want it. Anyways, it's things like that that you run across. And oh, the other store, the fifth one, that was where the museum is. That was a red and white grocery. And actually, that building was actually the room for the hotel, because on the corner, that's where they stable the horses and stuff. Oh. You can get it. That's how that building came into being. And we go back to the bridge, across the bridge. Here's the village hall. That's they stored the fire truck in that hall, where the meeting room is. That's where they kept the fire truck. On the front of the building, above the door, there was a marquee that said theater. There's a theater in there. It's up on the second floor. They had plays, they showed movies and stuff. And then you go from there across the street on Ontario. A guy named Jack Surridge had a gas station there. Then the O'Brien Brothers Printing was next up on Ontario Street. On the other side of the bridge was Mantegna's Furniture. Then there was this big area that had burned out one time. There was a lot of shops in there. My father, that's where his first shop was, before he was found out front on East Street. But then you came to the red building, big, tall, 3-story red building, and that was basically where Rittenhouse Company stored all their knockdown cardboard cartons for their packages or for their things that they made. And so when you went inside there, that's what was floor to ceiling with just cardboard cartons. They fall flat, you know. But, then from there it was the blacksmith shop. And that was a doozy there too. One thing they had out there that I thought was great, they had a wood carved full-size shotgun, double-barrel shotgun, and it had to be 6 or 7 feet long. And it was broke open so you could see the cartridge sticking out the chamber a little bit. And so, I mean, it was so accurately carved, it looked like a super giant gun. It was very, very professionally done. That hung there for years. And then when Harry Shaw disappeared, I think that disappeared too. So I think his daughter somebody took it. But anyway, Harry was a great guy. Harry Shaw, he was kind of a character. He liked to sit and play his guitar, and farmers would come in and have their B9 sharpened. And yeah, do it. He'd sit there and play his guitar. And sometimes they'd stop at the shop and say, "We just seen Harry, and he still haven't done our B9s yet." He said he'd get around to it. So, I mean, that's the way it was. But the thing that he did, I had a 1973 model Springfield rifle, and I'd lost one of the little screws from the sight on it. So I was talking to Harry about it, and he says, "I think I got one. So come with me." So we go in place. It was chaos in there. Everything was just everywhere, stuff on the floor. So he's walking along. And then finally, oh yeah, and he dives down, he feels around it, comes up with one. And so you got to be kidding me. How does he know that was there? But anyway, but he was a true character. A little bit on the shady side, somewhat, but then after that was the building where the barber shop was, where my father owned. And that building actually started out as Hart's Monument, and there were big tombstones in there. And in 1911, it became the grocery store, Polino was in there with a grocery store. And then they went out, and my father-in-law bought it, I think, in 1939 or 1940. So then he moved his family in there. But the star headlight, tombstones. I'll be there in a minute. There's too many things on there. It's Hearts, not Star. Hearts Market, tombstone. They moved onto the corner of Church Street and he used to. And eventually that got torn down because that's when they built the school. And now that company is in the city, they're still in business, but I was in the building where the shop was in 2006, I'll get the number right in a minute. 2006 when they were gutting it, and I was at the last stages before I moved out. And so when I looked in there, I saw what it was. You could see it was very old because it was a posted beam construction. And the guy that had it at the time, inside he had like a cat's cradle, all the wires going back and forth on it, and he had jacks under the floor. He's trying to straighten it out. I said, you can't, it's a posted beam. It is what it is. You can't tip it, everything is locked in place. So at the time when you built something like that, you built the walls, stood them up, put the cross pieces. If it was off, well, that was it. You just had to adjust that big, whether it was level. They didn't worry about level too much. Plumb they did, but not. They could always shim stuff up to make it level. But that was the way those timber buildings were built. And anyway, it goes along. Trying to think of, then down the street farther was Rittenhouse Company. It turns out that the house I live in now was where Mark Rittenhouse lived when he built that factory. And that was in the early 20s, and he owned the next 3 properties before that, and he built a factory on the backyards of all the properties. And then he tore one down to make for a driveway. And that second one was torn down in the 50s when they actually had a fire. They had to build a parking lot out front, so they had to take the house away to make room. But anyway, so things like that were around town. But the thing that I think you remember is there were always people everywhere. You went in the street any time of the day, there were people everywhere. And I know they told me that, my father told me that back in the 30s, 40s, that on Friday and Saturday night, you could not move downtown. There were so many people. But you didn't travel anywhere those days. People didn't go, even if you had a car, you didn't drive. You went to visit relatives, you didn't go on a trip anywhere. And it was actually, traveling didn't take place until probably mid-50s, 57, 55 in there. Because after the war was over, next thing you know, we had the Korean War. So that screwed things up too, getting manufacturing done. So it was very difficult to get new cars, tires, whatever else you needed for that time. But it took a while. So from the war, Second World War ended in 1945. So it took about 10 years to 55 that things began to become normal again. It was before the war. Oh, one other thing, around the corner from the side where the village office was Earl Rose's barber shop was in there, but that had been a grocery store before. So Earl called his place the Brooklyn Beauty and Barber Shop. Well, it turns out there was a store in there called the Brooklyn, something company had to do with food. What's different there is they sold beer, whiskey, wine, along with everything else in there. But this is pre-prohibition. So there were no laws for it. But it started funny that you could, in those days, you could buy it in the store. But then next to them was Iroquois Gas. So that's about all I can remember as far as walking around town. But I was so fascinated with the place. I really enjoyed the thing. One of the things that helped me when I first started school at that age, we lived in a small town on the Ohio-Indiana line. And I love small towns. I thought that place was great. And I used to go back, when we moved from there, I'd go back and visit my cousin because he was still living there and spend time there. But for a young boy, it was sort of like Tom Sawyer type in existence. You could go out and do all sorts of things. So I was glad to go back and see boys that I had known from time to time. So then I got into high school, and that all disappeared because I never got back there again per se, except to cut through there once in a while. I'd stop to go in, walk the streets just to look around and do remember what times used to be. But it's been a zillion years now since. I don't think I'll ever get back there again. But anyway, it's so that's how I got really small towns. I like them better. I'm not a city person. I do not like cities at all. You couldn't pay me to live in a city. But it's I don't know. I guess if you find things that you're comfortable with, and that's where you go. But also when I first came here, I'm originally from we'll say the Midwest. And people are a little bit more freer on talking to each other. So when I came here, I had no trouble. It was the same here as it was there. People were friendly, talked to you, nobody. So right away, you became part of the family here. And I lived at 41 Ontario Street. That was with Sue and Bill Dampier. And that was the other thing was talking about. I skipped that part. Anyway, when I was in Labrador, I started that I wanted to find a place to live. So I didn't overstay my welcome at my uncle's house. So I got to talking to some people, and they said, well, we know people in Honeoye Falls that take in boarders. And I said, where the hell is Honeoye Falls? That's how I got here. When I came here, got the place to room and board. Also, went over to Main Street, talked to Mr. Moffat, the town supervisor, got a job working for the county, right off the bat. We're building bridges, and so taking bridges down, putting bridges up. Anyway, so things like that happen. Oh, and her father is Bill Desford, and they lived in the mansion there across from the firehouse. And so his wife had arthritis pretty bad, so she couldn't handle herself at all. So I used to go there on Saturdays and do house cleaning for her. So I got to go see inside that mansion. And I swear to God, they must have had 11-foot ceilings in there, or whatever. It was a huge, big place. They had a big rose garden or whatever out in the back. Well, behind the store, exactly where that bookstore is now, that actually was just a little alley there, because that property came out. There was a wall there where they tore it all down to make the parking area. But so things like that I see that are different. Oh, we had 3 village cops at night and 1 during the day. Howard Shirley was during the day, and there was Dampier and Art Jenny John, and one of the Driscolls, the younger Driscoll, I can't think of his name. But they would cruise the city, the village at night, whatever. They had this old Chevy, they couldn't chase anybody, but they didn't try. But the guy during the daytime, he would just go around, see what things were going on. The guys at night, they were basically what you would call like a commercial police. They'd check locks and make sure the businesses were all locked up and stuff. But there was no major crime ever that I knew of here that happened. There were some rowdy people from time to time, but that's about it. So anyway, that's my experience with Honeoye Falls as far as when I came here. In the village, we had one down East Street, and then we had one Dick Smith. Hard name to remember. So Dick Smith. Part of the airfield is still there. The guy down the street here, Jack McNamara, he had an airfield right behind his house, right down East Street here. And then there was the main airfield where then we had 5 car agencies. Where the Canandaigua Bank was the Plymouth agency, Bud Russell. Next to him was the Buick Garage, and then there was the Moyes, Chevy. Across the street was Lewis Ford. That's where the place that does the landscaping now is Lewis Ford. Of course, then when I told you the whole agency that was hidden back up behind that. So when you think about it, there was a lot here, but Honeoye Falls had a lot of merchandising, it had industry, it had farmers that were quite wealthy here, everything was going good. And so for a small town, it had a lot going for it, because you look at other towns around, And they didn't make, oh, the other thing too, we had the big mills in town. We had the upper mill, the lower mill, and then across the river creek on the other side was a big bullet mill. That's all gone now. That's just the foundation of it. But between Honeoye Falls and North Bloomfield, there were 11 mills on this street. So you know this creek had to be really good. However, eventually, Rochester took over Hemlock Lake as the water supply. They built a dam at the end of the lake. And Hemlock Lake drains into Honeoye Creek. So that cut down the water supply. Then in Honeoye, they dug channels at the end of the lake to keep the wetlands wet. So that took more water away from it. So it's just a shadow of its former self now. And I tell people, in the summertime, when the Indians lived here, they had wheels on their canoes because they were never got anywhere. Yeah, but like you said, I was so fascinated with this whole place when I came here. I had super enjoyed everything. And for me, life was completely different. Looking back, it was like I walked through a curtain into another world. So when I left, it was a totally different life than what I came into here. And so things were just seeming to be falling into place as I moved along, and I thought, well, I'm not asking questions. Just go for the ride. And so far, so good. But a few glitches along the way. The biggest one was a couple years ago when my wife passed away, but well, it's to be expected sometimes. But I mean, you can't go on forever. But so to me, that was the biggest glitch that I came across here. And I think back to all the times I've been worried about this and worried about that. And one day I got to thinking, well, wait a minute. All those things I worried about, they're gone, but I'm still here. So my motto is now, don't worry about it. If you have a problem, I'll look at it later. Go away from it because otherwise you get too tied up to it. So I found you just go away from it, relax, and look at it another day, and try to do it that way. But anyway, so that's my take on Honeoye Falls. And then when I've got a couple of things that I want to go through yet too. Where are you here? Oh. This one really made out. I had a customer in the shop one day, and he says, "What do you think about doing a photo op in the shop?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds good." And so, anyway, we talked about it, and he left. So about a week or so later, I ran across him at the grocery store in town. And he said, "Did you get the phone call from Washington yet about the photo shoot?" I said, "No, was I supposed to?" He said, "Yeah, they're doing that." I said, "You're serious?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "I thought you were pulling my leg." So anyway, sure enough, a couple days later, I get a call from a lady in Washington. They set up for a photo shoot in the shop. They sent 2 people from Washington with their photography equipment. They hired a photographer from the city to bring equipment that they couldn't bring on the plane. They had a makeup lady that does makeup for film. So this little dinky hole in the wall, 12 by 15 shot. So anyway, when they had everybody in there doing stuff, well, the guy came from the city, had to do like parasol type shapes and stuff. And so when they were actually doing the shooting, almost everybody had to be outside on the sidewalk. So they were bugging me or something. "No, you got to smile. You got to smile." And I said, "No, I'm not making fake smiles. You guys got to start telling jokes." There's nothing worse than a fake smile, you know. So you're laughing and talking and relaxed until you came out better. So anyway, this was the result of it. And so this is oop. Well, they're going to do this too. This is Atlantic magazine. And here it is again. So I forget how many different magazines. So Honeoye Falls wound up being in an ad for General Motors. and I got the letter here from the lady. But anyway, so that was my 5 minutes of fame. So anyway, guy says, well, we can't give you anything. I said, I don't want anything. I says, I'm having a good time doing this. He said, well, we're going to give you a car. So he did. He gave me a Matchbox car. So anyway, it's hard to drive them. But, then the other thing was, then another time, I had a call from Mr. Hughes, who does articles for Finger Lakes. This is when I was on Norton Street, and he says, you'd like to come do an interview with me? He says, I heard about this guy has a barbershop with his art studio in it. And I said, yeah. So he came, and he must have talked, we both talked an hour and a half. And he was taking a few pictures, and he says, I don't know how much this will ever get in the magazine. I said, I don't care. I said, I just had a good time talking with you. That's what I found. So anyway, he did come in, he did an article in Honeoye Falls. And so here's Honeoye Falls, and there I am. Go there, oh, that's all right. So I wound up getting magazines that I hadn't thought about. Also another thing that I got into was they were going to do a community calendar. And so this was 1982, somewhere in there. And they wanted to do a cover for it, so it would be a throwaway. But the calendar would go to your address, it wouldn't go to you. They were working off the school role for other people. And so, anyway, Angie Kosloff, who was one of the teachers, kindergarten teacher, she came to see me talking, and she said, we got this thing we're doing with this calendar, blah, 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 we got this and that. And she said, the only thing is, we can't really pay you anything. And I said, so I do it for nothing anyway, because said, so that'd be my contribution to the community or whatever. So this was a calendar that like I said, it went to your house. It covered Honeoye Falls and Lima. It told everything that you had to know about both villages, whether the government, so the sports events, everything you could know about the two communities was in here. I thought it was the best thing he ever put out. And it was, had advertising things at the bottom, and that's how they were paying for this thing out. So it went along for quite a few years, but so I brought two of them that I did I would do one drawing in Honeoye Falls, and then I go to Lima. Then next year Honeoye Falls and Lima, because the two communities had to go back and forth. So this one I did 1982, I think it was, yeah. Because this side of the bridge had fallen off. And it happened April 1st. So a guy comes in the shop and says, the bridge fell down. I said, yeah, right. No, the bridge fell down. So I just stuck my head out, went on the street, looked down, and yeah, by God, I could see it's the buildings. So the bridge was still there, but the side had fallen off. Well, I was amazed that the bridge was still standing because the state was doing so many tests on the drilling holes in it. I thought they were going to make like Swiss cheese. The whole thing was just going to collapse anyway. So anyway, they knew they were going to have to replace it. They had no plans for it. It took a year and a half to replace that bridge. And so they were using Hyde Street as a bypass. Because Hyde Street, in the original days before a bridge on North Main, was how you got into the village from the north anyway. And so anyway, I did this one in honor of the Arch Bridge. And then this was another one I did on the mill and stuff. But, so I had fun doing it, but I never knew what I was going to have until it was printed. I would turn something in. And I got to thinking one day, it's too bad they didn't give me a size that I could just put something in all the time. I could do things, but I had no clue how they were going to put stuff. So anyway, so I did up through 82, up through I think 80 something was the last one. But I really enjoyed doing it. Like I said, it was something to do, and we go to places and sketches. This was all done freehand. And then I go with a ballpoint pen to straighten it out a little bit, and I would put it on the copier, and like here. I'd put it on the copier, and it'd come out one shade of gray. So then I would enhance the dark areas, put it on the copier again, it would change it a bit. So I did some more enhancing, so I did a series of copiers, so it came out to what I wanted, you know? Did I ever turn that in? But I was having fun playing with this thing. And so it was not a job, per se. But anyway, those are basically, I'm trying to think if there's something else here. Anyway, as far as I know, those are basically my thing with Honeoye Falls. So I want to lay now, if possible, anybody have any questions, anything to talk about? Yeah.
I think people would like to see the picture of the Despard house, the one you've got down there.
Oh.
Because a lot of people have never seen that.
I forgot to see there. For example, I guess somebody's talking, my brain didn't work. But anyway, first we get to this one. It blew this up a couple 100% to Main Street, 1876. But down below are the guys in uniforms. These are two different fire companies. I don't know what the parade is for, but there's two different fire companies here. At that time, that was the fire department. They had uniforms, and they had brigades. And so this one is, you got people up front, and you got those thing part here, and there's the ladder. This one has the steam thing on the back of it. But if you look at the buildings, they all look exactly the same now as they did then. And, so anyway, these two, this is the Despard house. The one was torn down across from the firehouse. And it was a huge mansion. It also caused me to have to move because I was renting half a house from a person who was dealing on trying to preserve this house. And while we were at this meeting, having this thing going, Alex Cappy was down there with a bulldozer knocking it down. That was a little tacky, you know. So then Dave Maloney was my landlord. Well, he got a little irritated and sold his house, so I had to leave because people buying it wanted to take over the whole house. So I wound up around the corner onto East Street. Come to find out later that the house I'm in now was actually owned by ladies that we built there. Anyway, the other thing was, in my house I found out later that there's also there's a house over in Genesee country that has the exact same floor plan and everything in it. Even the detailing on it, because I bought copies of an architect did renderings of different things in the house. And I bought copies of it, and I'm looking at the thing, and I'm seeing the same moldings, the same everything. The floor plan is the same, except it's flipped over, it's not. So, but the rooms are all the same size, it's just a reverse. That's cool. Anyway, so this was huge place, big garden out the back. This was, you can't see it very well, but it was a very long building. A really nice old building, but then they tore that down to make the parking lot for we didn't make the parking lot for where the diner is now. Anyway, it's I guess that's progress. I don't know what it's but things serve their purpose. I can see why this thing here, Mr. Despard, when they lived there, they would go to the city in the wintertime and live in a hotel because to heat that house cost a small fortune. And because they had super big ceilings and stuff. Well, this was built by Mr. Wilcox, who built the hotel on the corner there. And so I don't know if you knew Hazel Olney, lived next to me. Oh, you know her? Yeah. Well, she was related to the Wilcoxes. The Olneys come from a very old family. I think they originally come from Montreal. They're up on East Street in Pittsburgh, where Mile Square Road and that goes out. They had a farm up in there too, that were relatives. But so anyway, I hope I didn't bore you with all that stuff.
No.
Trying to wrap it on and keep things in sequence, you know. So that's hard because, like I said, we'll go past something, you know. Oh, I got to go back. But so anyway, I'd like to know if anybody has any questions about anything about the village. Yes.
When there used to be a BMW dealership up where Frames is now, up on Main Street.
Yeah, no, on Main Street, there was it was right in the corner of Ontario and East, where Storage's garage used to be, the gas station. Bill Kling owned it, and it was right there on the corner. And I remember one day I was walking past. He says, "Hey Hank, come here. I got something to show you." So I went over to see what he had. He had this little coupe there. It's all leather upholstery and wood dash and wood thing. He says, "I got just a car for you." I said, "Gee, that's great, Bill. Now let's see. How long would it take me doing haircuts to pay for that?" You know, haircuts for the thing. But anyway, so now they put them out to punch up this. But it was a little small dealership. But anyway, yeah, I didn't last all that long. I was surprised. Well, I shouldn't say I was surprised because Bill started having some health problems too later on. But Fred Wolfsberger, he was the guy on before this. I think he had a Willys dealership or something like that on the corner where Surrey lived that corner. Yeah, he was always had his fingers in something, you know. That was the other thing too. This building kind of came to be when they tore it. The stone building where the gas station is on up the street here. That was where the Legion post was. It was a stone building, and they tore it down. So now the Legion had to go someplace. So the guys were in the shop talking to Joe and my father-in-law, and they said, "We got to find a place, a building." And my father-in-law says, "Well, go to Wolfsburg." He says, "All you have to do is buttermilk, tell me we're going to put his name on it, he'll give you the property." So he did. So anyway, I hope I guess you can see that's Honeoye Falls.
Was there actually a hospital where the doctor's office is now?
Yes, no, that's no good. That was there was a medical center, but sort of, I wouldn't call it a hospital, but a clinic or something. Speaking of that, that's where my mother-in-law had her first child in there at the time. This was back in 1932. She had the next at home all the time. She didn't go back to this anymore. She had all the babies at home. A lot of women did at that time, didn't go to clinics. That was more like a medical center. It wasn't really a hospital per se. But the other thing too, ambulance. There was no ambulance here. There was no medical thing. The only thing they had for an ambulance was what's his name's Hearst. And so they took people to the hospital sometimes where they had to lay somebody out flat. What else was there? Something else that, I'll probably remember it too much later. But like I said, things like that were just non-existent. We had police here, we had a fire department. Well, that was it too. When the whistle blew for a fire, all the guys came out of the businesses, buildings, they all ran to go and get going because everybody in town worked with it on the fire department. It seemed like, and so they didn't have a standing crew. They just had when the siren blew, that was it. And so everybody had to go, but they didn't have many firefighters or like that, accidents once in a while like that. But it wasn't so much later that we finally had a first aid group there, people to take care of it. The fire department got bigger. So things, changes like that took place, but they were the biggest ones that I can think of. So, any more? Oh.
Hey, you said the creek was a lot deeper? So where the creek was a lot deeper?
Yes.
So
Actually,
where the falls look different then?
At the end of the creek, and below here, beyond where the little new schoolhouse is, but that's over this way. Where I am. They had a lower dam there, and actually, what has built up to run because they ran. It's still the thing for water to flow from there to the lower mill. Channel is still there above, the path goes along. But what happened at the time, they couldn't repair it because the state does not want any cement in the water because it creates problems. So they couldn't repair anything, and over the years it just gradually disappeared and disintegrated. But they had I was thinking that really would have been a good thing for the fire prevention because if you had water there, pumpers could use. Thinking back in days again. When I first came here in the wintertime, kids skated on the creek. They skated up around the bend where the Flaherty's is. And the times it had snowed, and they'd go down and shovel the snow off, and the fire department would come and spread water out on the creek so to get a nice evening. They played hockey, they played whatever. They had a fire going on the side all the time, and they had barriers about, we'll say, 10 feet from the dam, from the falls. They had a barrier there so you could go past it. But other than that, no. 3 years, in the wintertime, you see the kids skating there. Then 1 year, they weren't there anymore. Things began to change in the winter. In Honeoye, they used to have a winter carnival on the ice. And then it got so that, no, they better not because even the aircraft landing on the ice and stuff for the carnival. But anyway, so it got to be, ice was not being made that much anymore. Now it's hardly being made in the wintertime at all. If you think about it, ice was a big commodity back then because they cut ice to store it, to save it for the summer. And so now there isn't ice. You can make an ice cube, maybe a couple of inches, but like the last few years, we've been watching, you can see ice form, then it melts. And it forms, then it melts. But you don't get the depth that the ice used to get years ago. And I know a lot of people that were ice fishermen, they're complaining now because they can't do it. Their winters are too mild to not having the ice anymore. But anyway, things like that changed. But I'm trying to think. One other thing I was thinking about one day. I figured out. I checked my wife. She lived on East Street with a barber shop directly across from the Methodist Church. Her grandmother lived down the street where the exit for the school, the high school is. And she was a house just inside the exit. Her aunt and uncle lived down in Hyatt Street in Hollow, there, a big farm, 2 big buildings down there. That was her aunt and uncle and cousins that lived there. And so for her to visit relatives, she had to go downtown and do whatever. She never had to go more than a quarter mile in any direction for anything, And so, until she went to college. And going back to that again, that's when I met her, she was in the summer before her last year of college at Geneseo. And she was working for Lang Fastener during the day as a secretary. And she'd go home and change her clothes and go to the bar restaurant in Weimar and work as a waitress. That's how she got money for clothing. And think about it, she could pay her tuition. Go figure. You try that today, you better get a really good job, But anyway, and so that's when I started going out with her. And then after she graduated, and we got married. She taught for a few years. Once we got married, she stayed teaching, but she changed her name. So she had to get the kids used to spelling her name differently. But anyway, things like that happened over the years, it just that happened all of a sudden. No plan, nothing. By happenstance, just you bump into somebody, this goes this way, this goes that way, and all of a sudden your life is just following this path, and there you go. So, like I said, I've learned not to ask questions, just go with the flow. So anyway, that was about where it was. There was a gap there, that was all I could remember. Yeah, that was, but I understand it was a good sized fountain, really good horses could drink and everything. But like I said, it was interesting to come when it was still pretty much a farm town. That was the biggest industry here, but it had so much going for it compared to other villages around here that it really was a place that had But I think that's what the whole thing was the amount of industry and stuff they had here. People, shops, stores, whatever kind of things they did. Margles was a department store. They could do some furniture. They didn't really have clothing stores. But what happened was, in the 70s, the 60s, it kind of sagged a little bit. Things were going down. People were moving out and everything. And then all of a sudden, I noticed in the shop that I'm getting customers from Georgia, Iowa, and what the heck's going on? So they come to one day, well, all the industries of the city, they're hiring people to move into this area from other states. And they look around and they spot Honeoye Falls and they make a beeline for here because it's not been urbanized yet, so it's still a small town. So that's why you come out here. So you get people that work at universities, that work professors, people that connect that way. So it's a totally different group of people. Now it's getting to be really interesting because the different people that are coming. You had exchange students you get as customers. So I'm getting all kinds of people who are corporate, head of corporations. One was, I don't know if you remember, a man named Colby Chandler. He was head of Kodak. He was a customer for a while, and he was around the area. He lived out on Taylor Road. But if you saw him at the shop, you would not recognize him because he looked like a farmer. He liked to play in the dirt.
He wore his boots to work too.
Yeah, so he would, that was his whole thing. When he was home, he liked gardening and stuff. Well, the best of it was, I had a guy one night, he was always telling me about his trips to Japan. And so I figured he had to be in the automotive industry somewhere. But well, the other thing is, I never asked people what their name was. I never asked what they did, where they lived, or things like that. If they told me, that was fine. But I didn't want to be intrusive on it. So you called the shots for it, basically. If you talked, I would talk. If you just quiet, I didn't say anything either. So I just got along with how the customer was. But anyway, this man would come in, always talking about his trips to Japan. And one night, it turned out he was the head of Rochester Products. But anyway, he was getting his hair cut, and this fella came in a little early and sitting in a side chair. And he heard him talking, say about something about the product. Well, people work with there, always just refer to it as the product. So this guy pipes up, he says, you work for the products? He says, I do this, I do that, blah, blah, blah. And he was pumping himself up, all the things he has to do for the company products. He says, what do you do there? And the guy said, I'm the general manager. You ever see in the cartoons people shrink? I never forgot that this guy visibly disappeared over it. I had to turn away. I wouldn't laugh out loud so bad. Don't do it. Because it just took me funny. Just to watch that guy. He was kind of a guy that always tooted his own horn anyway. Just to see him that he tooted it one time too many, that was it. But, so that was the thing too, that you came in, people came visitors from out of state, people that lived here. So you got the, like for example, one day you got to know the guy who was the harbor master. I'm going to say the town of Texas, but anyway, the people that did things. We had a guy who, in the first big air shows they had at Geneseo, they had the B-17s there at that time. This guy, one of the customers, he was there. He was going to fly one of them. And he said, well, he hadn't flown those since the war. He used to fly during the war. So people like that you come in and people did things. You came from places. Then there was a retired Catholic priest. I don't know if Mother Purport. He was a very quiet man. This that. He was originally from Ottawa, but he. I should cross the river, go to the other side. But anyway, he taught in Canadian universities. He taught in U.S. universities, and he retired. He came out here. He was living in the apartments out here, and so he'd come in the shop and talk. And so when he would come in, working by appointments, I would set up at least an hour for him. So we would talk about history or philosophy or whatever, and I enjoyed talking with him on this stuff. But So like over the years, you had all kinds of people coming in, talking about different things. So it wasn't a thing that I had said at that time. When I first started, well, I got into appointments in years. When I first started out, I was doing 20 minutes per part, and I didn't know this is terrible. I can't do this, so I put it in a half hour apart. I didn't like being pushed. I didn't like to have to get something done in the hurry. If somebody came a little late, I wanted to have some leeway to play with. So I figured rather than when we're money, I'd rather work relaxed. But so that was the whole thing. But also when I switched to appointments, we lost some customers, but we gained some back because at that time the haircuts were getting longer. The hair was longer; it was taking longer to do, and so you had. When I went to appointments, well, first off, people asked if they could make an appointment. And I said, yeah, that's possible. I said, what we'll do is put you down. And so if somebody came in the meantime, it was about the same time. I said, well, someone just got an appointment. If you have something to do, go do it, come back and wait here, and I'll put you down and you be next. And I didn't want to go into appointments and then have to find out it didn't work, and then have to just change it again. So I figured let it go. In no time at all, it wound up being appointments because nobody wanted to wait anymore. In a way, that was sad because when the shop was full of people, you had conversations going all the time. When you got down to one-on-one, it was okay because you could really talk to people. Sometimes you got a little heavy with them. I had over years, I dealt with 5 people that were committing suicide. 3 of them did, 2 of them didn't. So I don't know if I had any effect on them or not. But anyway, so when you're one-on-one and there, people would unload on you, but stuff. But by and large, most people were quite friendly. Like I said, I had exchange students. I'm just rambling along stuff as it pops up. I tell people I think of thoughts as bubbles. That you're like your eyes in the champagne. The bubble comes up. It's another way, right into it. But it's so sometimes they go back and forth. When talking, all of a sudden something else shows up. But anyway, it's the kind of thing though. Like I said, for me, it's been a great run. I've enjoyed every minute of it. But like I said, the idea of ever working as a barber would have never been on my list. So it's amazing it lasted. But like I said, I think meeting the people was the interesting part. The work was okay, it was no problem. Plus doing artwork, it's like sculpting in a way. You're working with hair, you're forming it around the head of whatever the shapes of the head. Every once in a while, you had somebody who was you couldn't get rid of them fast enough. But I had this thing, no matter what, it took the same amount of time. Because I'm not going to hurry because this person's irritating. I'm going to go, oh, that's the fun. Speaking of irritating. When I first started with my father-in-law, I'm in there one day and there's 3 guys waiting and he's got a guy in a chair. And this fella comes in and he's really hot to go. And he looks at me and he says, can that guy cut hair? And my father-in-law says, sure. So he pops in my chair and I put the cloth on and get him started. And next thing he says, can't you work any faster than this? And I said, oh, sure. That guy probably had the most perfect haircut you ever saw. I cut every hair individually, I think. So I'm going along, and by the time he was ready to explode by the time he left. So the other guys were sitting there going, why didn't you just hit him upside the head with the clippers? By the time I did, 2 of you guys would be cousins. I said, no, what I found a long time ago, if somebody's giving you a hard time, kill them with kindness. Make it a point to go out of your way to be really good to do it like that, because they can't fight back. But my wife had a thing like that too. When she worked at RIT, she had people who had toes and tickets. And her boss was telling me sometimes you go by, that room was booming. There were people screaming and hollering. But she never spoke above a normal voice, no matter what was in there. And I think that's how you defeat a person, because if you raise your voice, now you're into 2 things. But if you just speak in a normal voice, And I would last 10 seconds doing that, but and she could. The other thing that I thought was interesting, she never brought her work home with her, even after a bad day. She had one day she did come home, and she said, "Well, I almost lost it today." And I said, "What happened?" And she said, "The guy came in and he punched every button." She said, "But I didn't lose it." But I thought that was great that she could come home and release herself from this tension and whatever was going on. You know? But I will have to say about her for the work that she did there, they put her in the RIT Hall of Fame. So that was the best part. Anyway, so it's, I guess I hope I'm not getting too random here. Like I said, when they start talking, it just things drift. But anybody, because maybe time I'll think of more, but I mean that's pretty good. Like I said, it's funny how when things start coming up all the time. This reminds me of this, that reminds me of that. So, but anyway, I want to say thank everybody for coming. I've enjoyed this. I hope you have too. But,
we have.
Check for you later, but I have a special thing after our talk this week, and I wanted to get you something. You mentioned there's something that you wanted that you would see that's a little something from me to you.
okay.
And maybe you could tell her the story after you open it.
Yeah.
Open it up, open it up.
Oh, okay.
Nice, Joe.
Yeah, you make it really good. Oh. Oh, that's what I'm looking for. Français Canadien dictionnaire. Because the Canadians speak French, but it's different French than Norman and French. In a sense, it's like we speak English, but in England we can't understand each other. We're speaking the same language basically, because the Canadian, their French got cut off in the 18th century, the same as our English got cut off in the 18th century. So when England took over Canada, everything was there. When we took over this country from England, England left, so everything stayed the same. So their language, they mix it with what they call franglais, a mixture of French and English. But anyway, thank you much. So anyway,
Thank you again.
Thank you.